The story of Tanjiro Kamado all begins when he goes out to that village, the village that he on occasion would help out. He would go over there to sell coal, hoping that he can get something or have a nice kind of New Year's for his family. But what he didn't know is that him leaving would be the craziest, not only coincidence, but one of the most insane failures he personally would feel when he would go over to that village and then head back the next day. Because when he would walk up that mountain, when he would smell something all around him, when he would smell the blood coming from his, family's home, he'd run over in one foul swoop and in a dash. And when seeing his entire family on the ground, panic would go through his entire body. He would realize, though, quickly that his little sister by the name of Nezuko is actually still alive. Grabbing her, running her down the entirety of the mountain, but then out of nowhere, she would attack him, attacking him and scratching and clawing at him, and even actually landing a slight blow, cutting him just a little bit, and in doing so, something would jolt inside of the body of Tanjiro, something that he didn't know was laying within him, but something that he would really utilize for the rest of his journey that he has coming in front of him. And that is, out of nowhere, the blood that was seeping through his body would actually have poison come out, and out of nowhere Nezuko would fall completely still and pass out cold from the poison itself. And after this would ensue, Giyu Tomioka would show up out of nowhere and ask Tanjiro what the hell is going on. Would even talk to him and break down what is basically who Nezuko is and what's happening, and telling him that Nezuko is a demon and yada yada yada, all that stuff. And obviously he would talk they would talk to each other, and Tanjiro would tell him like, no, it's my sister, like blah blah blah, and let me handle it. And eventually he would get that opportunity, and Nezuko would wake up and actually be somewhat under control. Nothing crazy, like she wouldn't be fully under control, she's fully okay, but she would have somewhat like an idea of like this calming sensation, and she would be okay. And this would lead to them heading off, by the words of Giyu Tomioka, heading off to Urokodaki. And of course, their little journey, he grabs some things on the way, and he obviously gets Nezuko into a spot where she can be covered up away from the sun, learning that demons are obviously weak, or, can be killed by the sun itself. After some time would pass, the nighttime would eventually fall, and Tanjiro and Nezuko would actually come across their first demon encounter. And that first demon encounter would be against the temple demon. And yes, Tanjiro doesn't really have the easiest time fighting against or even protecting himself against this temple demon, but with the help of Nezuko, it seems like it's able to be, somewhat endured. And then, of course, when Tanjiro would slightly get hurt during this time as well, his blood itself would actually ensue in like this poison, and he would realize that his blood itself is poison to the demons, but that's not it. He also realizes that he can actually control poison out of basically thin air. He doesn't know exactly how it works, but it seems like his body does actually make poison that is effective against demons, but he doesn't know how to use it outside of cutting himself with the blood. But of course, there has to be other ways to utilize it, other ways he could somehow find a way to actually use it against various demons. And he utilizes it just enough against the temple demon to take him down. And with the help of an arriving Urokodaki, they would take down that temple demon and handle things the way they need to be handled. And when the training begins with Tanjiro and Urokodaki, and when they begin training and he begins learning so many different styles of fighting, and utilizing a sword and water breathing to an extent, it starts meshing with his ability to actually utilize the poison. It seems that the water breathing itself, he's able to kind of imbue it with the poison that is kind of coming out of his own body, and he doesn't know exactly how it works, but he knows partially how it works. And the more he learns concentration breathing, the more he kind of sweats and imbues his sword itself with poison as well, leading to his water breathing to turn into kind of like a poison-like breathing. And in doing so, it seems like it gives him an opportunity to have a new way of taking down demons, a new way to actually defend himself as a demon slayer. And on top of that, he'd be working with obviously Urokodaki, but also the spirits of Sabito and Makomo. And in doing so, he learns so much about water breathing and so much about concentration breathing and also the ways of being a demon slayer. And then eventually he would be prepared, ready, and fully able and capable of doing things the way he believes they need to be done. And more specifically, he is fully capable of defending himself, slicing through that boulder, and before you know it, he would be off to actually try out for the final selection. And this right here is where things will turn up to 11 in terms of Tanjiro's capabilities, because once Tanjiro is out there, once he's over there slaying demons, quickly and obviously it's shown to everyone that Tanjiro is at a level with his poison-like breathing that he can keep up with all of these demons, slaying them without even really touching them. It seems like Tanjiro will slice at the necks of the demons, but if he misses, the poison itself would like extend the blade, affecting the demon, making the demon hallucinate, making the demon feel certain ways, and even making the demons sometimes fall asleep entirely. Depending on the demon itself, it actually has various different effects, but overall, Tanjiro has a very potent poison that continues to mess with these demons. And while one person is actually watching very closely, one person by the name of Kanao, wondering how he's doing it and wondering if he is like Shinobu and like, well, the Hashira that has trained her for so long. And she makes herself kind of question the idea of it, but being the way she is, she doesn't actually say much. She doesn't say anything, actually, and she just kind of leaves it at that. But she thinks about the idea of maybe bringing this up to Shinobu when she gets back. But other than that, she doesn't know too much, leading to Tanjiro eventually obviously taking on the hand demon as well. But just like in normal, he would slay the hand demon pretty easily, but even easier than normal. Showing up kind of like ways of utilizing the poison, he kind of makes it so the hand demon starts seeing other things, of being affected by that poison before you know it, or that poison mist, continuously messing with the mind of the demon and giving him an opening that would be easy for him to really depend on, and slaying the hand demon in one foul swoop, getting revenge for the demons or the demon slayers that kind of fell during this final selection, and carrying their like hopes and desires with him as well. Eventually, he would get his Nichiren. He would stop Genya from, hurting what looks to be a little girl, but is actually like not really a little girl, and he saves them from hurting, or he makes sure that he doesn't, or Genya doesn't hurt them, and he breaks his hand. And of course, on top of that, he grabs his Nichiren and or his oar, and he heads back to Mount Saguri to meet with Urokodaki once again. And obviously Urokodaki is happy as could be. Obviously he was training this kid to enter the final selection. He was training this kid to keep himself safe, but he was worried. He was worried, just like all the rest, that he wouldn't make it out, that he wouldn't make it back. But now he knows that Tanjiro Kamado is fully capable and fully able to defend himself and also defend others, so that the demons don't win another single day. And before you know it, his blade would come, he would get his kind of like clothing properly and ready, and his blade would arrive, and when he would grab onto it, the blade itself would actually just be black. And they would be kind of, upset about this. They would be, like that kind of sucks, it's kind of a bad thing for, the blade to be black, blah, blah, blah. But the reason for this is the mix of the water breathing with the poison breathing, and it seems as if it is definitely having an effect. And the reason why it's having an effect is because it's two different kind of styles that are clashing with each other, but at the same time, in unison, they're so perfect. In unison, they're so perfect in terms of what they can do and what the capabilities are. And Tanjiro obviously is going to show that as he continues kind of slaying demon after demon, and as he's going to progress throughout his own missions. And obviously this would eventually lead him to that very first mission, and that very first mission would be he'd be embarking to meet someone by the name of Kazumi, who actually saw him by his own eyes, his future wife at that moment, be taken by something known as the Swamp Demon. And Tanjiro is already on the lookout for anybody that looks like that demon, or anybody that needs to be dealt with like that demon, and he'll be looking out throughout the night, and eventually that Swamp Demon would show its face, and Tanjiro would kind of chase after it as it tries to take another female from the village. And Tanjiro would be in an all-out fight with it, as Nezuko would even help out as well, giving him openings to infect the demon with his poison, utilizing his first form, Water Surface Slash, but not going for the neck necessarily. And as the Swamp Demon would dodge, the mist of the poison at the end of the blade would kind of reach out that distance of the blade itself, infecting the demon with the poison, messing with the demon's head, seeing multiple things, but even messing with his head so much that he starts seeing Yorichi, seeing this figure that comes from the mind of Muzan himself, and he begins to freak out, lose his mind, and borderline absolutely go crazy. And eventually Tanjiro would use this moment to slice the neck off the Swamp Demon, and just like that, the Swamp Demon would be defeated, and just like that, Tanjiro would save so many potential victims from this place. But still, it doesn't matter necessarily that they were stopped when so many already went missing, but at least for now, the village can feel safe for the moment. But Tanjiro's mission is far from finished, because he'll be on his way already to another place, a city that never sleeps, a city that is bright during the night, and it seems like his mission is also to find a demon that is currently hiding within this city. And after some time, after some movement, and after getting there eventually, Tanjiro would see and smell the demon that is here, and that is the demon by the name of Muzan Kibutsuji. And it seems like this smell is exactly what he smelt at his house when his entire family was sent to the afterlife. And that is the demon that ended his entire family, and he wants absolute revenge. But before you know it, he would be caught up in a bad situation. This so-called Muzan would have a wife, a kid, and he would be freaking out, wondering, how is this a thing? How is this possible? This doesn't make sense. He would lose his mind just a little bit trying to figure it all out, but he would tell Muzan that just so he knows that they're not finished just yet. He can walk away, he can go away, he can do whatever he sees fit, but it doesn't change the fact that they are not done. And he can't do anything now, but he will be able to do something later. Muzan would turn a man into a demon just to get away, quietly in his own little way. But that demon would be handled by Tanjiro in one foul swoop, making him pass out and give him an opening to slice through him just like that. And Tanjiro all he's thinking is that he would give up anything to make sure Muzan never gets away ever again. And as this thought is going through his mind, he would be introduced, and Yushiro would walk up to him and introduce himself and tell him that Lady Tamiya would like to speak with him. And that meeting would ensue. They would talk about a couple things, about Nezuko, about her condition, about if she can really be brought back to, being a human. And of course, that conversation would be an iffy one. It would be a hard one to really truly figure out, because we don't know for sure. But the idea is to get the blood of the 12 Kizuki and then basically get the, get a kind of a pseudo kind of cure that would allow Nezuko to turn back into a human. But everybody needs to know that there's no guarantees in this. There's no absolutes. But as Tanjiro and Yushiro and Lady Tameo are talking about all this, eventually a noise can be heard, and that noise would be two demons, Susumaru and Yahaba, hunting for Tanjiro, and they arrive quickly, and Tanjiro tells them that he has no time for this. Nezuko would jump out of her box to fight as well, but Tanjiro would tell them to go away now, and he'll let them leave, but if they don't, he'll do what must be done, in which immediately they would attack. Of course, Susumaru and Yahaba respectively would utilize their own powers, from kicking what seems to be a ball to utilizing these arrows that are utilized for long distance attacks, making it so Tanjiro does have a difficult time keeping up with it, but at the same time his reach does expand, and the more he moves, the more he's utilizing this kind of like water breathing / poison breathing, a little bit of a mix of both. The more he's utilizing it to move around, he's kind of covering the entire area with this poison slowly but surely, and it seems as if it's starting to affect even Yushiro and Lady Tameo. Of course, he tells them to kind of move away, to get away from this area, and soon before you know it, Susumaru and Yahaba are started to be affected by this as well, like a lot more than Yushiro and also Lady Tameo, affected to the point that their movements are getting slower, their attacks are getting slower, everything is getting slower, and eventually Tanjiro would have that opening, slicing through both of them in one foul swoop. But of course, that slow, that grogginess that they're feeling from the poison would ensue in slower regeneration, and also make it so it's so much easier for him to close that distance and end what he needed to end. And before you know it, he would have exterminated Susumaru and Yahaba without even really needing the help of Lady Tameo and Yushiro, even though he really couldn't see the kind of like the kind of arrows that were getting sent around and stuff like that. The slowdown of the battlefield helped him so much that he could really push that boundary to actually defeat both of them in one foul swoop. And after a conversation with Lady Tameo and Yushiro, they talk about, what needs to get done and how they're going to do it and what they're going to do in terms of and basically getting some of the vials of blood from the 12 Kizuki, and then eventually they would head off to their next mission, where Tanjiro would actually run into Zenitsu for the very first time, telling him to basically get away from that girl and, handle his business elsewhere. Like, stop, getting all in the business of this random girl, and stop getting in the business of this girl that wants nothing to do with you. And he drags him off to a mission where they actually go to this mansion to find the brother of these two little kids. And Tanjiro and Zenitsu would eventually split up, where Tanjiro encounters a former member of the 12 Kizuki by the name of Kyogai, in which Tanjiro would kind of see an opening for Kyogai, because Kyogai would kind of just sit there ranting and rumbling about various things, and Tanjiro would see this as an opening, and the fact that it's a closed off area. He would begin kind of emitting this poison more and more, and before you know it, before Kyogai starts really messing with the room, flipping the room upside down, Tanjiro would be already jumping everywhere, utilizing water breathing and different styles, and eventually as he's doing so, Kyogai would start seeing things to go very blurry. Things would start messing with his head, and he would start realizing that whatever Tanjiro was doing, whatever he was doing, just standing there, just slicing the air and doing nothing, he was actually doing something, filling the entire room with a poison that is for demons specifically, and a poison that puts him flat on his butt before you know it, leading to Tanjiro actually landing a clean slice, one foul swoop, and slicing the neck off of Kyogai, getting the blood actually in a vial from him as well, and sending it off to Lady Tameo. Unknowingly to Tanjiro, though, this vial would be also perfect for getting the poison that he's even emitted from his own body as well, that basically grants him and grants them an opportunity to even get more potent or a more potent version of it. And before you know it, Tanjiro has that blood sent off, and he helps clean up the rest of the mansion, as eventually he would head outside, meeting up with a boar-like person that he did meet briefly within the mansion before it got all flipped around. But of course also Zenitsu, who he was with in the first place. Zenitsu there protecting the box for Tanjiro. Tanjiro would face off with this boar by the name of Inosuke, and after a hard-fought battle, one singular headbutt would lead to the victory for Tanjiro, and lead to actually Inosuke deciding that, you know what, I'm gonna follow alongside him just for now, which is good because, you know, we don't want things to blow out of proportion for no reason. And of course, this would lead them to heading off to a nearby place, a nearby house, and that nearby house would actually have like this old lady that would actually take care of them, get them food, get them rest and stuff like that, eventually preparing for their next mission, which would be a mission that would be the biggest one yet, and one at Mount Natagumo, and one that had demon slayers going missing by the dozens. And before you know it, they're up there and they're ready, and they see something that terrifies them, and that is a absolute fest of demon slayers that are puppets or being puppeteered by some sort of demon. But Tanjiro knows and can tell that that isn't even the main demon, as he sees the main demon standing above them, and he can smell it on him. And before you know it, Rui would be gone, and they would be having to handle this mother spider demon before anything else, helping the demon slayer puppets first, and then leading to them facing off with the mother's spider demon's doll. His poison would not be very effective, leading to him really needing help with dealing with it, with Inosuke coming down from the sky, slicing and cutting through the body of the doll. But of course, after all this is said and done, his poison would be very effective against the mother spider demon, as he swoops in and makes her pass out cold. And it seems as if she just wants things to end quickly and painless, like she doesn't want to be here anymore. And Tanjiro, well, he obliges with that, allowing the poison to seep in and making it so the poison takes its course without actually hurting her to an extent, making her pass out, go unconscious, and also, well, pass on to the next life via the poison as it seeps through the body and quickly spreads rapidly through the demon. And after all this is done, Tanjiro and Inosuke would face off with another demon, the fathered spider demon, but with one messed up kind of notion, with one mess up at all. Tanjiro would be launched in a different direction and would be forced to fight against the main demon that is there by the name of Rui, who is berating the daughter demon, berating his sister. And Tanjiro tells him that that's really no way of treating your sister. And well, Rui tells him that for one, he has no reason to say anything about the way he treats his sister, but on top of that, that if all else fails, he'll just replace his own sister with the one he has in that box. Which a fight would break out, and Tanjiro would be fighting for his life. A fight that he's never had before would be ensuing, and a fight that he's never thought he would go through so early on. He would be giving it his absolute all. And Rui himself, he has no idea that the entire area is slowly but surely being covered and kind of sectioned off with poison. And he would be getting caught by it from time to time. The area, he would kind of go through some of the poison on accident and absorb some of it into his skin, messing with his regeneration and messing with his ability to really fight at full capabilities. But still, he's able to keep up with Tanjiro. The strength of Rui is nothing to be to slouch at, nothing to really look at and think, oh no, it's nothing. No. The Rui's strength is pretty insane. So he's able to somewhat keep up, leading to Nezuko helping out to the best of her own ability. But it seems like her being around the poison a lot more than any other demon gives her an immunity, or at least to an extent, an immunity, or at least kind of like a somewhat somewhat chance to like not be fully affected by it, and the effectiveness of it, of course, would be lower. Now, as this fight continues on, Nezuko would help him get an opening that would get her kind of hurt and, kind of tied up within a tree. But this would be when Tanjiro not only is able to reveal his brand new breathing style, that of sun breathing, but also when Nezuko is able to reveal her blood demon art that is being affected by not only the poison but also the sun breathing that Tanjiro can utilize and the bloodline that follows. And Tanjiro watches as Nezuko utilizes this blood demon art that is not only creates these flames but also creates this poison mist that lights on fire all around Rui, making it so that he gets lit on fire, poisoned, and it continues to burn through his body. And Tanjiro sees this as an opening, utilizing the Hinokami Kagura, and as he does this, he would utilize it in unison with his poison, allowing for the poison to seep in even deeper within Rui, making it so he can barely move. Full paralysis, and his body is rejecting itself, eating itself alive, burning and destroying itself to pieces. And before you know it, Tanjiro realizes that his poison will mean more than he could imagine for fights that are coming up very soon, and more than he could imagine in the future of what's going to happen to every last demon slayer. And after the defeat of Rui, and after he is killed with the help of Nezuko and, well, obviously Tanjiro together in unison, eventually Gyu Tomioka would show up in complete shock to see that they actually defeated one of the 12 Kizuki. And Tanjiro kind of says, like, don't be surprised, like, I had a great teacher. It was your teacher at the end of the day. In which, obviously, Gyu, he wouldn't smile or anything, but he would nod his head and say, impressive, like, good job. And before you know it, though, Kanao would come soaring in to slice through Nezuko, but Tanjiro would clash with her, but would stand literally no chance. The reason why he's so good against demons, obviously he's capable as a swordsman, but it's the poison. The poison helps him so much, but it doesn't affect, or it doesn't really affect, everybody else that surrounds. AKA Kanao or other demon slayers. It doesn't affect them really at all. So when he tries to fight and help out and get his sister out of harm's way, he can't really keep up very long. Not before he's knocked out cold, and before you know it, he wakes up in front of all the Hashira, and they're debating on what his fate should be. And Tanjiro tells them that Nezuko is a demon that would never hurt anything, and they need her to help. They don't understand the powers that her and him actually hold can help so much, and this would obviously lead to like a trial by the Hashira, or more specifically the Wind Hashira by the name of Saname, and he attacks Nezuko, slicing into the box, and Tanjiro, pissed off, headbutts. Bang. Immediately Saname, and they go kind of brawling a little bit until Ubiyashiki, actually the master of the Demon Slayers, of course, basically tells them to stop and halt, and eventually Kaguya or Ubiyashiki would give his blessing to Nezuko after reading the letter from Urokodaki. And after all that is said and done, Saname even still tries to discredit Nezuko, but with the more the poison and the effect that the poison has on her, it actually helps her with obviously avoiding the blood of Saname. And on top of that, just makes sure that it instates and shows everybody that she is a demon slayer. She is capable, and she is ready to protect everybody with the help of Tanjiro and all the other demon slayers, ensuing in an eventual rehabilitation training. But a lot of this rehabilitation, it not only involves Kanao and many others, but it heavily involves Shinobu, because she wants to know more about the poison that bleeds off his skin, and the poison that could hopefully help and affect the eventual battle with some of the most terrifying and most disgusting demons that are out there. And she even clues Tanjiro in on this idea, and clues him in on the idea that, and well, what she's been doing to basically inflict her entire body with a poison-like substance, and or kind of like a wisteria type of thing. And she wants basically him to do the same for her, to basically help her make it more potent, in which Tanjiro does do that in the acts of kind of like all the practice and all the training they do alongside each other, and helps her out the most he possibly can, and even donates vials of his own blood, believing that it could be effective against the demons, or even could be the true antidote to the demons as well, in which she agrees that there genuinely could be a chance for that to be the truth, and might just work the way they want it to work. But he has a lot more training to do, a lot more rehabilitation to do, and what better to do in terms of after your rehabilitation training than to work alongside the Flame Hashira himself, Rengoku, to learn not only more about this poison side of breathing of kind of like his abilities, or that poison breathing portion of his abilities, but also the acts of sun breathing that he knows legitimately bare minimum or basically nothing about. And before you know it, they're on that train, the Mugen Train, and they walk up and they see Rengoku eating sushi like it's going to be his last meal, or eating food like it's going to be his last meal. And before you know it, they would be on the train moving down the tracks, and Kyojuro Rengoku would be ready and able to show all of them what a Hashira truly looks like. But you're gonna have to wait until the next and final part 2 of 2 of What If Tanjiro Had Poison Breathing. Tanjiro Kamado is now with Rengoku, one of the main Hashiras, other known as the Flame Hashira. And they are there on the Mugen Train to actually defeat whatever demons are going to portray themselves, at least here. And as this occurs, well, a demon would show up, and Rengoku would show exactly what makes him so great as a Hashira, instantly defeating and killing the demon that would show its face. But that demon that showed up on the train would not be the last, because before you know it, the demon slayers would be put to sleep and basically put in these dream-like states, where even Tanjiro is seeing a life with his family once again, a dream inside of a dream in some sakes. And it seems as if the idea of him being a demon slayer was actually just all false. All that stuff that happened before was just all false. That's until he realizes something, sees something, and smells something. He smells this kind of mist, this poison mist that begins to seep into the world, as if it seems as if Nezuko, and or kind of like Nezuko on the outside in her demon form, is having an effect. Now obviously he sees his family right in front of him, but seeing this snaps him back to reality and makes him realize that this right here is all fake. And when the poison seeps into his body, he would quote unquote pass or die, and he would snap back into reality, making it so that he realizes that he has to do something now. Not only does he have to cut through so many of these demons and protect a lot of these people that are on this train, but he decides that he immediately will go for the front of the train, where the demon that they don't know his name just yet, but is known as Enmu, is going to reside. And Tanjiro goes right after it, goes right after this location, actually filling up parts of the train with poison to slow down the demon and have the poison seep into the demon as well. And as it's doing this, the kind of power that was stretched out throughout the entirety of the train starts making its way on the idea of, it really starts hurting Enmu that he spreaded the power so thin. Because when Tanjiro, faces off with Enmu, and he faces him one-on-one, Enmu's already weakened, so much so that the poison is already having a massive effect. So when Tanjiro starts clashing and fighting with him, before you know it, Tanjiro already has such a massive upper hand before his own teammates, or, Inosuke and Zenitsu and Rengoku are even awake just yet. And when Inosuke wakes up in general, Inosuke would be there to help him, and in one foul swoop, Enmu's defeat would be ensured, especially when the poison would start ticking and weakening him more and more and more. And with this happening, Muzan actually kind of gets note of this and thinks that this might end up being an issue. Tanjiro might be an issue. And there's a reason, and well, he's glad that he ended up sending someone that is very powerful to get rid of him. And that, well, that is Akaza. He sent Akaza, Upper Moon 3. And Tanjiro only can watch as Rengoku will clash and clashes over and over and over again with the insane demon known as the Upper Moon Akaza. Now, obviously, he wants to do something, trying to help, but he knows that he can't really stand toe-to-toe with someone like Akaza, at least not yet. He's not prepared enough, not kind of known enough, but what he can do is infect him. That's all he can do. If he can somehow get the poison over toward him, that could truly change things forever. So he immediately would try to do this. All he needs is one slash. All he needs is one take, and that's what he gets. But when he lands that slash, when he jams his sword into Akaza, Akaza would proceed to slash one of the arms off of Tanjiro immediately. Tanjiro's in shock, thinking, no, I wasn't quick enough to move. This can't be happening. But Rengoku would push Akaza out of the way and strike him toward the neck, and he could see as Akaza is actually slowing down. Even so much so that his regeneration is almost gone as well. And Tanjiro made such a difference, but sacrificed one of his arms in the entirety of it. His arm completely gone, and now only able to utilize a singular arm, or his right arm. He's only able to utilize his right arm. And as this is occurring, and as all of this is going ahead, it seems like Rengoku is getting the upper hand against Akaza because of how much the poison is actually affecting him, closing that gap and that distance. Akaza believes that he needs to take down Rengoku now, like eliminate him, get him out of there and kill him before anything else continues to ensue. But as this is happening, the sun would slowly but surely rise, and Rengoku would sacrifice himself, put his blade into Akaza, jamming it into the ground, holding him still, as Akaza would put his hand straight through Rengoku, ending him swiftly. But as the sword stays within Akaza, he's too slow, too injured, and too kind of, has that poison all throughout his bloodstream, to the point where he's unable to do a single thing and unable to stop anything from happening, being defeated and being killed right then and right there. Everybody that is watching, Inosuke, Zenitsu, Tanjiro. Yes, Tanjiro is a little bit out of commission for the most part because of, his whole arm thing, and, the fact that he's trying to maintain the fact that he doesn't want his blood to, run out for the most part. He doesn't want to die, so he's trying to focus on that. But Inosuke and Zenitsu are watching, as not only does Rengoku pass on, but Akaza does as well, as the sun cripples and destroys him, making him nothing at all. And when Muzan sees that Akaza doesn't report, and he senses and can see that Akaza is no more, his own mind would be in shock, believing that whatever that kid did, whatever happened, was able to even cripple and slow down one of his strongest demons, and that is a little bit worrisome. Now, as the group is taken back and basically put on like a recovery, Tanjiro begins training, preparing, and also just getting used to the fact that he is literally missing an arm. And on top of that, Tanjiro even would go out and meet with Rengoku's father and Rengoku's brother to learn more about sun breathing. And as he learns more about sun breathing after all of his rehabilitation, after his kind of training and preparation and all this stuff to get him prepared with fighting with literally one arm now, well, he starts going on simple missions. Nothing crazy, nothing insane, but it's pretty obvious that he is progressing in terms of strength, power, and all that stuff. But he still is now missing an arm, and makes him, well, let's just say, a little bit less capable to the degree that he wants to be, in terms of actually kind of cranking up the his ability to do what he believes he can do. But there's one thing that he starts working with, and that is working with Shinobu, basically injecting himself and inhaling kind of, or eating or ingesting the things that she is ingesting, other known as, well, wisteria or something along those lines, something that could help them. And he believes that it could affect his poison even more. But if all else fails, he'll do what he has to do. And he even tells Shinobu that all it takes is for Muzan and the rest of the demons to be gone. That's what they need. They need them to be gone, and then they could truly do something, in which she agrees. She believes that everything it takes sacrifice, and she honestly respects Tanjiro so much more, the fact that he is willing to make that sacrifice, in which Tanjiro, of course, agrees and believes this to be true. And him, Shinobu, and Lady Tamaya would eventually start working together, just a little bit, nothing insane, nothing crazy, but just a little bit working together throughout this time, leading up until Tanjiro is actually put on a mission with Tengen, kind of by force, because, you know, Tengen was going to take 2 other people that weren't really prepared or really could handle themselves. So Tanjiro would go with Zenitsu and Inosuke, and his capabilities and his strength and his ability as a demon slayer, yes, put him at a point where he could definitely handle himself even with one arm. And on top of that, when he faces off with Daki for the first time, his poison does one hell of a job, allowing him to slow down Daki and even affect Gyutaro, who is still within Daki, and make them far weaker than they would normally be, allowing for a fight, yes, with a one-armed Tanjiro, but also with Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Tengen to be a lot smoother, a lot easier, and it leads to Tengen not getting as hurt as he would have, but he still wants to retire and believes he should retire because of the words of his wives. And of course, Tanjiro would continue pushing and continue training throughout this time as well, and he would continue kind of recovering even from the fight that they just had against Daki and Gyutaro, because of all the damage that he was going to take anyways. But on top of that, they were able to see something out of Nezuko, see another step beyond her power, a form that they didn't know existed, a demon-like form that allowed her to be even stronger, even more powerful, and even more capable. Something they weren't expecting, but something that is more welcome than you could imagine, especially with Tanjiro missing an arm and believing that his days are not necessarily numbered, but his best days are numbered. But he still trains. He recovers at the Butterfly Mansion, training with the likes of Shinobu, even getting some reps in with Giyu Tomioka, trying to learn some techniques that Giyu has learned as well. Something that he really wants to get into, but something he will add on to in the near future as well. But that's not the end of Tanjiro's training. His training would lead him to the Swordsmith's village to not only, repair his sword, but to also get some training in with the Yorichi Type 0. And with only one arm, it makes things very difficult and very, very hard for him to kind of push himself to the degree he wants to. But luckily he was here. Luckily he was prepared, because the poison breathing that he has, the abilities he has in terms of poisoning the demons, is more than capable of defending himself, Nezuko, Genya, and Mitsuri against Hantengu, who shows off a multitude of different forms. A multitude of forms that a lot of them are in shock about, because initially, Muchiro would just slice the head off the demon, and that's it, right? But no, that's not it. That's not at all it. There's so much more that he does, and he begins spitting out, or basically changing or adding different forms, and these forms are more deadly than the other. But as their heads are cut off, as more and more are cut off, time after time after time, eventually they would stop at this one singular demon, one that is shocking in itself, and one that is more powerful than all the rest. The manifestation of hatred. And this version of him begins to send these earth-like, like serpent snakes, or whatever you want to call them, maybe even dragons to an extent, at all of them. Mitsuri fends him off to an extent, and Tanjiro looks for an opening. All he needs is one singular kind of stab, a direct attack that would force them to kind of poison / kind of slow him down like they did to Akaza. And eventually, after a ton of fighting, they would do just that. But Tanjiro would take a hit that would be brutal, to the point where he can't really keep up anymore. And it's up to Mitsuri to do her best to kind of, try her best to help out or do whatever she has to do. And luckily enough, with the slowing down of the demon, the rest of the demon slayers that are there are able to hunt down the final manifestation of Hantengu and look to take him out. The manifestation that if they cut off that head, then it's over for the demon. Tanjiro goes hunting for it, but he's so weakened at this point, so tired, so exhausted, especially with his lack of ability to keep up to a certain extent. He tries his best to get to him, but he can't. Not until the sun is rising and the demon is trying to kill actual people, and Nezuko is out within the sun, and he has to make a choice that he needs to do something. And he ends up throwing his sword directly at the demon and collapses to the ground, stabbing the demon in the back, and it slams him into the ground, and the poison begins to take over, slowing him so much that eventually the sun would catch up to him, and the sun would burn him into nothingness. And as this occurs, as the sun would do its work, Tanjiro would turn behind him, and he would see Nezuko burning up as well, but eventually she would stop. The burning of the sun would stop, and she would be fine. She has conquered the sun. Nezuko Kamado has conquered the sun. And everybody around, well, they're standing there in complete and utter shock and awe, but that's not the only thing. They're in shock the fact that she not only is living, but she has now essentially pushed them into an era where demons can truly be immortal. And it's a scary thought and a scary thing, but the work on kind of getting a cure for her is now even in full effect, to the point where Tanjiro, yes, he's training and goes through Hashira training with everybody, and even trains heavily with Giyu, believing that the form that Giyu has created, known as Dead Calm, is something of main importance for him. And as all of this training goes on, as he pushes his body to his absolute limits, eventually he would continue his works with Shinobu, with Lady Tamayao, and they would cure Nezuko, or at least make the cure and believe it is available and ready. And eventually he would have his face-to-face with Muzan, his face-to-face with the king of all demons, Lady Tamayao, standing there with him, and he would go in to strike Muzan down. And as he would go to strike him, Muzan would go for the kill, but out of nowhere, the Stone Hashira would come out of nowhere, landing a crucial blow to the head of Muzan, obliterating his head into nothingness. But obviously Muzan can regenerate his head, regenerating it, but that's not what the point of this was, not the point of what they were trying to do, because out of nowhere, Lady Tamayao would grab onto Muzan and would basically begin allowing herself to be absorbed within him, and more or less making it so that all this poison, wisteria, the cure, all of these things would start seeping into Muzan. But on top of that, Tanjiro is not done yet, because he would go charging in at Muzan, slashing into him, and doing the same thing with Lady Tamayao, as he basically is allowing himself to be absorbed. But that's not the only thing he's doing. He slows down his heartbeat to practically nothing, and all he's thinking about is water breathing. Final form, Dead Calm. But this is not it. this is not the only thing that's happening. He's utilizing Dead Calm as a way to not only get close and, well, obviously surprise Muzan, but also absorb so much more poison within to his own body while it's not actually killing him, making it so that his heartbeat isn't going super quick. His body isn't going to absorb the poison the way it can, but once it starts beating faster and once he gets close enough to Muzan and it starts pumping once again, in which Lady Tameo is ready to help him with that specifically, once his heartbeat starts pumping again and he's getting absorbed by Muzan, the poison will start spreading quicker than anything has ever done, and Muzan will start feeling the true effects. With Akaza already dead, and with Tanjiro being absorbed, and with Lady Tameo sacrificing herself as well, it seems like Tanjiro and Lady Tameo will make their sacrifice, and their sacrifice will not be in vain, because Muzan will be defeated this day. Muzan will be defeated because of Tanjiro, Lady Tameo, and obviously Shinobu's help, but it doesn't mean that Tanjiro will get to see the day end, and Tanjiro won't be able to get to see the new day rise with the sun overhead and Muzan burning to a crisp, because eventually Muzan would be killed, but Tanjiro would be dead long before he could see the rise of the sun. But all that matters is the sacrifice. All that matters is that Muzan is defeated, and all that matters is that this world will now be safe, with some Hashira still living and able to live out their lives, at least for the tiny bit that they have. At least they can continue on and still find solace in this normality that is ahead of them. But without the sacrifice of Tanjiro, none of this could have happened, and even the sacrifice of a demon themselves, Lady Tameo. And with Tanjiro passing on, he knows that his little sister Nezuko can still live her life as a normal person and a happy one as well. But with that said, that is the end of this story, the end of what if Tanjiro had poison breathing. And if you enjoyed, please show some love. Leave a like, leave a sub, and leave a comment down below. All that good stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.